thing they do is they put the pilot chute in, and they hold the back of the parachute open, and they stuff this pilot chute in there. It's on a big spring. I mean, that makes you feel good to know your whole life counts on a spring. So they put that spring in there, and then they fold it over, you know, and then they pull this ripcord, and the spring jumps out, and they say, now this is the way it's going to happen, and then the wind catches this, and the whole thing goes out, and all. Well, I felt so good after that, I said, man, I'm ready, let's go. So the guy looked out, and he said, well, no, he said, we can't do it today. I said, why can't we do it today? He said, well, we can't do it today because the wind is blowing too hard. And he said, when you make your first jump, we like to put you in a big chute so you come down easy. But he said, the wind is blowing so hard, if we put you in a big chute, you go all the way to Puget Sound before we get you back. Well, I said, man, those guys out there, they just landed. He said, yeah, but they're experts. And he said, they're in a little chute, so they come down faster. I said, you give me one of those little chutes, it'll be all right. See, the problem was, if I didn't jump that day and I came back later, I had to pay another $25. I'm too cheap for that. I said, you give me a little chute, it'll be okay. So up I went in this airplane. Cessna 180, no door on it. And I had my 3 pieces of information. You only need 3 pieces of information to jump out, that's all. So I had them right in my head. I was ready. So up we went, and we flew over the target. It's a big X in the field down there. Now, I happened to be a pilot, and he said, do you see that X? And I looked, and I couldn't see it. I was a little afraid. I could not find that X. He said, do you see the graveyard? I had that in sight. I said, yes. He said, about 1 mile south the graveyard. I said, okay, I got it. Now, this is a very scientific maneuver they do. You fly right straight over the X into the wind. See? Then you take and you throw out this little stick with some crepe paper on it. You've done this before. You know what I'm talking about. Throw out this stick with some crepe paper on it, you know, and it goes down, see? And if the X is right here, we'll say this beautiful lady here is the X, and you throw out this crepe paper, and the wind blows it, you see, and it comes over and it lands here. Now, you go around then, and the object is you fly over that crepe paper and over the X, and when you get as far on the other side of the X as the crepe paper landed on this side, you jump out and then you float back and land right on the X. Very scientific. So they said when we went over the X, throw out the paper, and I reached out the door, you know, and I threw that paper, and the wind caught my hand and whipped it back. And for one moment, just a moment, I had total, absolute, sheer, 100%, all-American, red-blooded terror. I wonder, what in the honk am I doing up here? Man. But I made up my mind. You know, I wanted to jump for one reason. I wanted to see if I had nerve enough when they said jump that I would jump. So when it came time, the guy reached out and he rapped me on the chute and he said, okay, get ready. Stand up. Now let me tell you what that meant. Now I'm in the airplane and this is the door, see, and out there on the door there's a little step. So you reach out there and you put your left foot on that step. Then you reach around and you grab the doorpost, see? And then you step out like, and you put your leg up in the air like this. And you reach out and you grab the wing strut. So this is your, you know, you're like this. 140 miles an hour, 3,500 feet above the ground, and there you are. Now the object of that is so that when they say jump, see, all you do is push off with your hands, lift your foot up, and you are going face down in this attitude. But face down, see. Now, the reason for that is you want the chute to come straight out of your back. Because if you jump out flip-flop and the chute comes between your leg when it opens up, you have problems you don't talk about at Christa schools. See? Now, whether you know it or not, I just got to the first point of the message, which is very simply this. As we went over the target, the guy reached out and he rapped me and he said, "Okay, Lanson, stand up." And at that moment, I had to make a choice. Whether I was going out on that step or I was going to stay in that nice warm cockpit. Now, I hope before we get done in the next 3 days, I can teach you some of the things I learned about the Christian life. I kidded Mrs. Adams, but she means an awful lot to me. Her mother was instrumental in my finding the Lord as a high school senior. And it was through Ardene's consistent life and witness that God spoke to me. But I have to tell you something. The first 10 years of my Christian life, I thought it was a pretty lousy deal that I'd gotten into. And man, I was preaching 8.5 of those 10 years. I'm going to tell you about that in the next couple of days as we share together. I've been converted now 26 years this coming September. Let me tell you some of the things I've found out real quick. Number one, I found out that Christianity is not a church and it's not a creed. And it is not a doctrine and it is not a denomination. It is not a rule book. It is not a system of legalism. Christianity is one thing, pure and simple. It is a personal relationship with Almighty God provided by His Son, Jesus Christ. That's what it is. And when you finally discover that, a whole lot of things begin to make sense that never made sense before. You know, one of the things that used to just drive me nuts was this thing that if somehow I got dedicated enough, I would know the will of God. That is a bag of bones. I don't buy that tripe anymore. Man, I'd get so dedicated, I'd confess everything I knew. I'd make up things to confess so I could get more dedicated. I'd have devotions, I'd read, I'd pray, man, I'd get my heart right and I'd pray about a thing. God still didn't give me any answer. Then I discovered something. I discovered something that all through my life I had to make choices. If I was going to jump, I had to get up and I had to get on the step. And the Christian life, my young friend, is a relationship with God through a span of time where you and I must make choices. And nothing gives me a pain quicker than the person who gets somehow in their feather head that all of their problems are somebody else's doing. Yeah, I'm a mess, but I'm a mess because My mom and dad are a mess. Man, you just don't know my mom and dad. Or I'm a mess because I got to go to a Christian school and I think the thing stinks. Or I'm a mess because my old lady and my old man make me go to church all the time and it's a pit. Or I'm a mess because Jimmy Carter doesn't know what he's doing. I tell you, I'm going to even quit buying peanuts. I'm for the best man. I wish there was one. You know, the trouble with our country and the trouble with our churches and the trouble with most of our Christians is they all are asking this question: what are you going to do about my problem? I'm not doing nothing about your problem. What are you going to do about it? You can jump out of the airplane, but not unless you stand up and get on the step, you turkey. There are some things you got to make up your mind about. Let me tell you, I don't envy you, man. I'm glad I'm about done living. I'm 43 going on 83. I'm too pooped to pop. I got pains that pills won't even reach. I'm not as bad as Mrs. Adams. At least my hair's still the right color. I bet you she's later for chapel the next 2 days. She'll show up for the benediction, huh? But, man, you got to handle your life. I got it clear up to here with these Christians who use God for some kind of a cop-out. Well, I got all this stuff wrong in my life, and man, I pray about it, and I ask God to take it away, and He doesn't take it away. I guess it must be all right. What kind of stupid reasoning is that? I used to work at this place till they got the victory over me. And you know, when I left here, I started a nonprofit corporation, 3 corporate profit corporations, and 3 partnerships, and all of a sudden I was in a mess. I didn't know whether to whistle or wind my watch, you know. So I went and I hired a management counselor. It was an interesting experience. I was talking to him one day. He said, "You're not too happy today." I said, "No, I'm not." Well, he said, "Can you tell me why you're unhappy?" I said, "Sure I can." And I named about 3 things plus my kids. Then he gave me a profound piece of advice. He looked at me for a long minute, and I looked at him, and he said, "Well, why don't you quit doing the things that make you unhappy then and start doing the things that make you happy?" Stand up. You have to make some choices. Well, I got out on that step. Are you ready, honey? You be my post again, won't you? I got out on that step, and there I am. And the guy said, "Now, when you get out there, remember, don't look down. Look up."